Dirty air. It's one of the biggest headaches when it comes to running the next gen cup car. And in today's video, I'm going to actually show you a couple of adjustments that I've been working on for the last couple of weeks to combat dirty air to where you can actually drive in dirty air, push the car, get around people, and not burn up your stuff. And best part is, these adjustments are not going to actually sacrifice a ton of speed. So stick around. What's up, everybody? Thomas Brandon here. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. And like I said, we're going to be looking at this stuff that I've been working on for dirty air. Now, I want to cover a couple of things. So first of all, I want to show you what actually happens to the car in dirty air, because I think this is something that people don't quite fully understand, and why it's such a nightmare with this next gen car. So with the next gen cup car, the thing you have to understand is that this car, unlike the Gen 6, right, or even we look at the current Xfinity, is the aerodynamic balance of this car is essentially flipped compared to those other ones. Okay, so what do I mean? If you look at the Xfinity car right now, or you look at the Gen 6 Cup car, if you were to measure the aerodynamic balance of that car, you would see about 60% of the downforce would be on the nose, 40% would be on the rear, roughly. Obviously, there's ways to tweak that and adjust it and stuff like that, but on average you're going to be looking at about a 60-40 split, okay, nose to rear. With the Gen 7 car, the next gen car, it's flipped. You're looking at about 40% on the nose, 60% on the rear. That rear diffuser, and the ground effects, the underbody, it has it's putting a ton of downforce on the rear. Plus, you've also got the spoiler on the back. And when you look at the nose of the car with the step in the front, you've obviously got the front air dam, and there is the underwing in the front, stuff like that. But for the most part, it's not that much compared to the rear. So when you are looking at an instance with dirty air, what's happening is when you are getting behind another car, that car is disrupting the air that is the downforce on the nose, the front part of the car. So now that 40% that we have, we're losing that, okay? Because you're not getting the air on the nose or the front, and you still have air coming in from the sides. You can get air on these cars under the rocker boxes, right, on the sides. Air can still come underneath that. That's why side draft and all that stuff like that is such a big deal with these cars. But air will come underneath that, and you're still getting air that's going out that diffuser. Because remember, all you got to do is get air under the car, and it's going to cause that effect. Now, we want it to come, the entire length of the car, right? Under the nose, through the entire bottom of the car, and out. That's exactly that's what we want to be exact, right? That is our perfect scenario. And when you've got all these cars in front of you and stuff like that, it doesn't always happen, and this is the dirty air situation. Now, you can have a really good setup and it'll work really well in dirty air, okay? Like, it doesn't, just because you've got a good setup and you're behind cars, it doesn't mean that you can't pass people or that you can't, deal with dirty air, because you 100% can. The issue that you usually run into, though, is especially during the first 15 to 20 laps when everybody's on new tires, is that you can burn your stuff up trying to get around cars that you are faster than. It doesn't take much for somebody to hold you off. So this is why dirty air is such a headache, or can be such a headache, is it's hard to pass. People can just take your line, take your air, and now we've all felt it. You go into the corner, everything feels good, and all of a sudden the car, it's like, it doesn't turn, it just keeps on pushing up the track, and then what happens? You're cranking the wheel, the thing snaps loose, or you can feel it starting to burn the rear tire as it's wiggling, and it's just a nightmare, okay? So how do we combat that? Well, I've been working on this for the last few weeks, because what I wanted to do was not just have like a dirty air setup, because that's not what we want, okay? What we want is basically kind of a series of adjustments that, hey, if you go out and let's say you've got a race setup and that race setup's good, and you go out and you qualify, and this happens to pretty much all of us, or at least it happens to me quite a bit. You screw up your qualifying, right? You tap the wall, or you get loose, or you push it too hard, and the car wiggles, and now you've lost a couple of tenths, right? With these cars, a few tenths, you can go from starting in the top 5 to starting 20th, right? And now you're back in the pack, and you're sitting there, what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to deal with all this dirty air, right? Am I going to push it these first 15 laps and hope that I can get up front, and then we get a caution, which, you know, a lot of times that does happen. So, you know, you can go that route. But then there's also those times where you get that 40, 50 lap run, and you've passed all those cars, and now you're watching everybody just pass you back because you smoked your stuff trying to get up to the front on the short run, you know, hoping that we didn't get a long run. So what can we do? Well, I came up with a couple of adjustments that you can use on pretty much any setup, and I say pretty much any setup because obviously I can't test this on everybody's setups. I just tested it on a variety of ones that I have created myself, okay? And you can make these adjustments and they'll hopefully help. Now, a couple things to note. One, this is not for a road course, okay? And this is not for, you know, like the big tracks, Daytona, Talladega, you know, even Atlanta. We're not talking about those. Those ones you're in the draft the whole time. Those are completely different things. This is really for the intermediate tracks. So like the Kansas's Auto Club, even, you know, Pocono, Chicagoland, you know, tracks like that. The 1 mile to 2 mile tracks where drafting, you know, you're getting a draft off the cars in front of you. Aero plays a huge role, not just only in the draft, you know, getting a run, but also the handling of the car, okay? So that's the types of tracks that we're talking about. So let's head over, let's take a look at some data. All right, so what we're looking at here is, this is a setup. I went out and I ran a couple of laps. We're at Kansas. It's with one of the insider setups. So this is a setup that I built for the insiders, and it's just a race setup. It's not built specifically for dirty air or anything like that. It's built with the intentions of, hey, this should hopefully get you towards the front of the pack. And obviously, anytime you're racing, you're going to have to deal with some dirty air. Keep in mind, this is really designed for what we're covering is for you. Like I said, you're going to be in the back of the pack, right? You're starting it towards the back, and dealing with dirty air is one of those things that just, you know, is a nightmare. It's like, damn it, I screwed up my qualifying. My car's great up front, but now I got to start 28th out of 34 cars. What am I going to do? So that's why I wanted to show you this, because these are a few adjustments that you can make, and a couple of them you can actually, if you do get up front, you can actually take out of the car. You can actually revert the car back to what you had, okay? So let's take a look at this first. This is just a couple of laps. This is clean air, you know, out front by myself. All right, no other cars around me. Okay, I just did 3 laps. I did one in the middle groove, the top groove, and the bottom. Okay, because obviously when you've got cars running in front of you, there's different ways that car can affect you. All right, then what I did was I went out and did some AI races, and I just tagged the back of the field, had like 25, 26 cars in front of me, and then I just ran in the dirty air and I ran those lines, top, middle, bottom, okay? And if we look at this, the first thing that you're going to notice here is that in clean air, okay, the car is working great, all right? When we look at our aerodynamics, my rake angle is where I want it. It's in the zone that I want it to, especially on the dynamic aspect of it. When I'm rolling off the throttle, the nose is dropping the way that I want it to. We're still maintaining some of that negative rake angle to get air under the car the way that I want with the diffuser. And then as I pick up that throttle, that rake angle is shifting back to the rear, and we're getting the drive off the corner. This is exactly what I want to see when I'm doing the setup, okay? The rake angle is something that I tune quite a bit on the car for specific tracks. Now, when we look at the applied downforces of the car, okay, and keep in mind, for my calculations, applied downforce is how much load is being generated on the front of the car, you know, based on the springs and everything else, and the rear of the car, minus the static load, okay? So this is taking all the static weight out. It's just saying, hey man, when you're driving down the straightaway or you're going into the corner, at this point, there's 278 pounds of, force on the front of the car, all right? And there's 382 pounds on the rear, all right? That's what this is saying. It's not calculating anything else. It's just those loads, okay? So that's how I look. That's one of the ways I look at the downforce balance of the car. Now, keep in mind, those numbers can fluctuate based on spring rates, all right? So that's why I'm not paying so much attention to the amount of force versus the differential between front and rear. That's the key to me, okay? So the other thing, obviously, is the ride heights, which is going to play a huge role because the ride heights, especially with the car that you have this, panned underbody, right? And you've got the diffuser on it, stuff like that. Ride heights are critical on this car. Literally a tenth of an inch on one corner of the car can have a huge effect on how it handles. It really can, especially when you get into longer runs. This is the thing that I'm always trying to tell people about this car. 5 to 10 laps, any yahoo can go out there and just stomp it, man, and be fast. You really can. After those first, 10, 15, 20 laps, dude, how does that thing handle? How does that car feel? Because if you're going out there and you're just smoking your stuff, well, congratulations, you better hope for a lot of cautions, right? So the ride heights, tuning the ride heights on this car is really, really important, okay? So this is what we've got by ourselves, clean air. Now, when we look at this, if we compare this to our first run, so the exact same setup, but in dirty air, okay? So we're going to look right here. Actually, let's do this. Let's make the white is going to be, the white lines is going to be our clean air. Our colored lines is going to be the same exact setup, but in dirty air, okay? So when we look at this, we can see here, all right, that going through the corner in dirty air, all right, if we look over here at these averages, one thing you're going to notice is that we're higher, okay? So on the front of the car, we are about a half a tenth higher. I know that does not sound like much, but it is, man. It is, okay? On the rear of the car, we're a couple hundredths, all right? So not too bad, all right? This is the first lap of the run, so it's not too bad. When we get to our next lap, now we're starting to see that shift even more. You can see on the front here, and this is, now we're running the high line. When we look in turn 1 here, it's basically a full tenth. A tenth of an inch higher. Once again, I know that doesn't sound like much, but it is. When you look at this based on the aerodynamics of the car, look at this setup. The difference in the rake angle of the car when you're in dirty air. Remember, this is the exact same setup. We're running the exact same line. The only difference is I've got cars in front of me, right? The colored line, cars in front. White line, no cars in front. The difference in the downforce, all right? Right up here, front applied downforce. We've got almost a 20-pound difference on average through turns 1 and 2. On the rear, we've got close to 20 pounds. It's what, 17 pounds of rear applied force, okay? The average rake angle of the car is different. Look at how much more we're at in rake angle, okay? The white line, remember, that's by yourself, clean air. We're at negative 0.29 degrees, which means that the rear is 0.29 degrees lower than the front, all right? So you have to think about it at 0 and then 0.29. Once again, that sounds like a very small amount, and it is, but it matters because when you're at now negative 0.32, what's happening? What's happening is we've got a car in front of us, okay? I guess I should put my hands so you guys can see it. We have a car in front of us, and we're going into the corner. We're losing the air on the nose, which does what? That lifts the nose up, but remember, we're still getting the air on the back. So the back is still sucking down, and now it's sucking down even more, and that's where that push comes from. That's why it feels like you're plowing the nose, because those front tires have now lost grip. And you've got even more downforce, right, in terms of rake angle on the rear. Now, the downforce is not actually generating more, but the angle of it, right? You've got more angle. So you're losing that front. It's actually sucking the rear down more, and now you're getting that push off the corner, okay? That's only on the second lap, all right? How do you think that's going to feel after 10 laps or 15 laps when now you've also burnt up your tires because you're driving in dirty air, all right? Once again, if we look at turn 2, it's the same story, okay? It's the same story. It's a little bit closer, but it's still the same story, okay? We're losing force, rake angles more, same exact thing, all right? So how can we accommodate for this, okay? Well, if we look at the dirty air adjustments, you can see now here as we go through the turn, our nose is a little bit lower than clean air. Our rear is a little bit higher, all right, but it's not a ton. It's still 200ths on the left rear, and on the right rear, it's not even 100th. It's a few thousandths, okay? If we look at the aerodynamic, this is really important because we've actually balanced out that aerodynamic. Our front applied downforce with our dirty air adjustments, 272. In clean air, original setup, 269. On the rear, 374. Clean air, 376. And you can see our rake angle is actually a little bit different. We don't have as much negative rake in it. It's at negative 0.25 instead of negative 0.28. Okay. And that's essentially what we've done is in terms of adjustments, all I did was I went 2 clicks down on the front, 1 click up on the rear. And when I say up on the rear, I mean both the right rear and left rear. 2 clicks down on both fronts. Then I basically changed the roll stiffness of the car, okay? So we're talking about the ARB. So I softened the front and I stiffened the rear off of whatever they were. So for example, if you're running a 2-inch bar with a P3 up front and you're running a 2-inch bar with a P2 on the rear, okay? What I did was I went down 2 on the front and up 2 on the rear, okay? So I went down to a 2-inch bar with a P1, and then on the rear I went up to a 2-inch bar with the P4, okay? Now those aren't the exact bars. I think it was actually like a 1375 P5 up front and like a 2-inch P1 in the rear. I can't remember exactly what it was. So that's essentially what I did. And what that does is obviously the aero changing the rake angle is going to accommodate for the dirty air. And then the ARB will also help with mechanical grip. Now, here's something that you have to keep in mind. This is why earlier I said, this will work on most setups, okay? Because there are going to be situations where you're not going to want to do, soften by 2 on the front and stiffen by 2 on the rear. You might only want to go 1 and 1. You might only want to actually drop the front end 1 click and raise the rear end 1 click, okay? But from everything that I've tested, and I've tested all those variations, for me, the max, that's what I'm telling you, is the maximum boundary that I wanted to go was down 2 clicks on the front, up 2 clicks on the rear, and then softening the front by 2, stiffening the rear by 2. Everything else I left the same. All I'm doing is adjusting the aerodynamic balance with the rake of the car, and then also just changing the mechanical grip a little bit. And by softening the front and stiffening the rear, essentially what you're doing is you're adding more grip to the front and, a little bit less to the rear. Now, in terms of the loose and tight, keep in mind when you get into the ARBs, you're talking about roll stiffness and stuff like that. There's so many factors with the handling of the car. That's the easy, simple way to put it. But the ARB, they do so much on these cars, it's insane. So it can have other effects, but that's why I said those are the maximum that I went. And when I drove the thing in dirty air, started in the back and raced it, it felt great. The car felt great. We pushed it to the max. We didn't burn up the tires. We did like a 20 lap run at Kansas. I was running everywhere, and I think we went from like 24th to 10th or something like that. And then unfortunately the power went out. Thank you, PG&E, the power went out right in the middle of it. But I have gone out and tested more since and tried this stuff more and more and more, and I'd already tested on it weeks, and from everything that I can tell, it works. Now, I'm going to show you that race clip right now, and then when we come back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys some other adjustments that you can actually make during the race to adjust for dirty air, or get it, if you have adjusted for dirty air before the race started, how you can get that back out. Okay, so stick around. You guys are already hitting each other. All right, so far so good. We'll see how this thing gets in a few laps. But right now it feels pretty good. Don't assume I'm gonna go on the apron, man. I don't like doing that. That was intense. A little loose up top there, but I think it was because I hit that bump. Should have maybe gone to a little taller gear. Being in all this traffic, the draft I'm getting off people's nuts. I'm redlining about hitting the limiter about 3/4 of the way down the straightaway, especially up high here. But then again, maybe not, because I wanted the gear to also run the bottom. This was the insider gear that I had in the setup. need one of these guys to get past the other one. I don't really care which one. There we go. How much fuel do you like? Okay, we're almost to the 5-gallon mark. Then we'll really see where this thing's at. 'Cause I gotta say, right now, this thing's been working really good in dirty air, but we know once we burn 5 gallons, that's when the car really changes. We'll see if I've burnt up the tires. Because a good handling car in dirty air doesn't mean anything if you smoke your stuff. Someone's got some net code. Oh, damn it. Caught that apron with my left front tire. Uh-oh. 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 Woo! That was close. Shout out Bob Hogue. Nice avoid on that one. This thing is still ripping the top. Alright, we're at 16th. What did we start? 28? Okay, this thing feels incredible. All right, so as you guys saw in the race, I was pushing it hard and the car felt great. It worked great. So anyways, what about adjustments? Well, this is really, really important because if we look at this, all right, and I've got the iRacing Kansas oval set up here. If you look at this, remember, what I did to compensate for it, we lowered the front 2 clicks and raised the rear 1 click. Okay, so if we look at this, we're down at a 1406 and a 1689 up front. We were at a 1444 and a 1726. So basically, we dropped the front a couple of tenths, right? And then we raised the rear. If we look at that again, we raised the rear a couple tenths. Those couple tenths of an inch, remember, that's going to drastically change that rake angle. Now, keep in mind, and this is really important, the spring rates are also going to have a big effect on this, okay? Because a couple of clicks with a 3750 spring in terms of the dynamics on the track is not going to be the same as a couple of clicks if you've got a 2,000 pound right rear spring. Okay, statically it's going to change it, but on the track, that 2,000 spring is going to be compressing a whole lot more than that 3750. So that's something that you have to kind of keep in mind. When I tested this, it was with, I run pretty stiff springs. So that's why I said the max for me was 2 clicks. All right. But if you look at that, remember, when you're out on the track, you can actually adjust the spring perch offsets and compensate for that. So remember, when we're on the track now, as we're racing, if we get through dirty air and it's like, hey man, this thing's feeling good, I want to actually get this back to where it was, we can't jack the front up with the spring perch offsets. Now, one thing you can do is you can adjust tire pressure, right? So, wrong way. If we wanted to go up a couple of pounds, we could do that. And as you can see, that raises it back up some. Okay. And then you can do the spring perch offset adjustment in the garage, or during your pit stop, I should say. Raise it back up or lower it back down depending on what adjustments we were making. Because remember, if we were looking at this in terms of compensating for dirty air, we could do this on a pit stop, right? Man, the car's not working, we're in dirty air, what can we do? Hey, let's drop the front a little bit, raise the rear up, let's take a little bit of that negative rake out, and then we can, handle that dirty air a little bit better. And vice versa, you get through the traffic, now you're up front, hey man, I want to get my setup back to the way that it was. Well, let's just, raise that front back up a little bit, drop that rear a little bit, and now we're good to go. Okay. So I hope those adjustments help you. Give it a shot, see what you think, and yeah, let me know if this helps down in the comments below. All right, you guys, so that's going to do it. I hope this helped you, and like I said, I hope it gives you just kind of an idea specifically on what's happening with the car in dirty air and why why we're having those issues. Obviously, as much data as iRacing gets from NASCAR and as much as they, work together and stuff like that, this is never going to be like it is in real life where, hey, Kyle Larson's crew chief, they said that they make these adjustments for dirty air, and so I'm going to try that. That's not, and vice versa. Obviously, these adjustments on the real life car probably not going to do the trick. You know what I mean? But for the sim, right, it works pretty well. And with the iRacing, talking about this oval refresh that's coming, where the dynamics of the track are going to be changing even more. I think knowing how to make these little adjustments on this car and knowing what the effects are, I think is going to be huge. It really is. Being able to not only build a setup, but also have confidence in adjusting that setup during a race is critical for these cars. They're so temperamental, and with the oval refresh coming, I don't know if it's coming in December in this next build or if it's next year, I don't know, but I can tell you right now, the the stuff that we've seen on the dirt side with the dynamics of the track and how much it's changing and what adjustments how they affect the cars on dirt, I can only imagine it's going to be even more so on the asphalt side, especially with this next gen car. So if you can start playing with this now and figure, because this car's not going anywhere. NASCAR's not getting rid of this anytime soon, right? They might make some changes to it, but overall, this is what we've got, right? This is what we've got for the foreseeable future. So knowing how this thing works and reacts and what happens when you make these changes can be huge. It can be huge. So I'm hoping that this helps you guys. I really am. And like I said, get a little notepad, write it down, something, put it somewhere on a sticky note or something. So that way, hey man, if I'm going to be running in dirty air a lot, I drop that nose a little bit, raise that rear a little bit, adjust those ARBs, and go from there. And test this before you just go out in a race and do it blindly. Because like I said, I cannot tell you that it's going to work on every single setup. But thank you guys very much as always. If you want to check out any of the stuff that we have to offer at SSR of our free setups, I'm building the 87 Cup Series setups for the Winter iRacing Series. I'm going to build all those again this year for it. We did it last year. We had a ton of success last year. I had a couple of wins. There was a handful of drivers that were using the free setups were just on fire. So hopefully we can have the same type of luck this year, but they'll be loaded up on the free SSR setup or membership site. So if you want to get those, make sure you head over to schoolofsimracing.net, click on the button that says join community so you can access those. They'll be posted every Tuesday leading up to the races. Also, if you want to join me for my live streams, I'll be live streaming tonight in the Winter iRacing Series and whatever else we can run. I live stream a couple nights a week. And then also we've got our SSR Discord, our NARC League. We got a ton of stuff that we're doing. Always, we got a huge community of literally just thousands of awesome people. And if you got questions or need help or you're just looking for people to race with, you can find them in the SSR Discord. So if you want to check any of that stuff out, links for everything down in the description below. That's a tongue twister. But anyways, you guys, thank you very much. Until next time, I want to wish you good luck, good racing. Take care.